This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. I sat in the dim light of my living room, clutching a glass of wine that had gone warm in my hand, staring at the wreckage of my life playing out on a projector screen in front of my family. The room buzzed with shock, gasps, murmurs, and the clink of a fork dropping onto a plate as I scrolled through the evidence. Photos of my husband Jerry, his arm draped around my half-sister Karen, their smiles cutting me deeper than any knife could. My chest tightened, a storm of rage and heartbreak swirling inside me, but I kept my voice steady. "This is why I called you all here tonight," I said, my eyes locked on Jerry's flushed, guilty face. "I wanted you to see the truth." Karen sat there, her manipulative mask slipping, looking small and vulnerable for once, while my mother gripped my hand so hard I could feel her fury through her trembling fingers. It was the moment I'd been building toward, the moment I exposed them, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like drowning. My name is Lydia Bennett. I'm 48, a woman who once thought she'd cracked the code to a happy life. A solid marriage, a cozy home in our little suburban town, and a husband who made me laugh until my sides hurt. I'm not perfect. My hair's a little too frizzy, my patience wears thin when I'm stressed, and I've got a stubborn streak that's gotten me into trouble more than once. But I loved Jerry with everything I had. 12 years together, 10 of them married, and I thought we were unbreakable. I was wrong. Now here I was, unraveling the lie that had been festering under my nose, piecing together a plan to take back what they stole from me. Not my husband, but my dignity. It started a few months ago, subtle at first, like cracks in a dam you don't notice until the water's pouring through. Jerry and I used to spend our evenings curled up on the couch, watching old movies or planning weekend getaways. But those nights faded. He'd come home later, his eyes glued to his phone, brushing off my questions with a curt, "Work's crazy, Lydia. You know that." I'd catch whiffs of a perfume that wasn't mine, something floral and sharp, clinging to his jacket. My gut twisted every time, but I told myself I was paranoid. I wasn't. One Friday, I decided to surprise him at his office with takeout from our favorite Italian place, hoping to rekindle something, anything. I texted him, "On my way," and got a reply 10 minutes later. "Working late, babe. Big project. Don't wait up." My heart sank, but I was already there, standing in the parking lot with a bag of cooling pasta. I was about to leave when I saw him slip out the side door, climb into his car, and drive off. Instinct kicked in. I followed him, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, telling myself it was nothing, just a quick drink with a coworker. He pulled into a dive bar on the edge of town, one we'd never gone to together. I parked across the street, watching through the window as he slid into a booth. Then she walked in, Karen, my half-sister. Her blonde hair caught the light, that familiar sway in her step I'd known since we were kids. She sat across from him, and when their hands met across the table, my world tilted. I felt sick, my breath hitching as I watched them laugh, lean in, share a look that should have been mine. I stumbled back to my car, tears blurring my vision, and drove home in a daze. The image of their betrayal burned into my skull. Karen and I were never close, not really. My parents split when I was 5, and my mom married Harry a year later. Harry brought Karen into the mix, 4 years younger than me, all sharp edges and sly smiles. We got along at first, playing dress-up in Mom's closet, but as we grew up, I saw her for what she was, a master of manipulation. She'd lie to get out of trouble, twist stories to make herself the victim, and flash that innocent grin to charm anyone who'd listen. She was jealous of me, always had been. My scholarship to college, my friends, my life. She'd make snide comments at family gatherings, little jabs about my weight or my clothes, disguised as sisterly teasing. I brushed it off, kept my distance after I moved out. But she never stopped needling me, especially when it came to Jerry. Back when we were dating, she'd flirt with him shamelessly, complimenting his gym photos, saying he deserved someone prettier. He'd blush, laugh it off, and I'd tell myself it was just Karen being Karen. I should have seen it coming. That night, after the bar, I lay in bed pretending to sleep when Jerry stumbled in, reeking of whiskey and sweat. He didn't even try to hide it, collapsing beside me with a smug grunt. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The next morning, while he showered, I snatched his phone from the nightstand. My hands trembled as I scrolled through his messages. Dozens of them, flirty and intimate, signed with heart emojis from K photos too. Them at a beach I didn't recognize, her in a bikini, him grinning like a fool. I snapped pictures with my own phone, evidence piling up like bricks in a wall I'd build to protect myself. I couldn't confront him yet. I needed a plan. I drove to Mom's house, my safe haven since I was a kid. She was in the kitchen chopping onions for soup when I burst in, tears streaming down my face. "Jerry's cheating on me," I blurted, "with Karen." Her knife froze midair, her eyes narrowing as I showed her the proof. "That bastard," she hissed, slamming the knife down. "And Karen, my God, I raised her like my own." She pulled me into a hug, her strength steadying me as I sobbed. Harry was at work, thank God. I couldn't face him yet. Mom paced the kitchen, fury radiating off her. "We're not letting them get away with this, Lydia. We'll hit them where it hurts." That's when Tina showed up, my best friend since college, a fireball of energy with a mouth that never quit. She barged in, saw my red eyes, and demanded, "Who do I need to punch?" I told her everything, and she grinned wickedly. "Oh, honey, we're not just punching. We're burying them. Let's hire someone, a pro." Enter Detective Jake Russo, a wiry guy with a scruffy beard and a no-nonsense vibe. Tina found him through a client, and he met us at a diner the next day. I slid Jerry's phone pics across the table, my stomach churning as he flipped through them. "I need dirt," I said. "Something I can use." Jake nodded, scribbling in a notepad. "Give me a week. I'll dig deeper than a grave." He didn't disappoint. 3 days later, he called me to a park bench, handing over a folder thick with secrets. "Your husband's been skimming cash from his company. Thousands, maybe more. Funneled it into trips, gifts, that shiny ring on Karen's finger." I stared at the bank statements, the receipts, my anger boiling over into something colder, sharper. "Perfect," I whispered. Mom and I hatched the plan. A family dinner, a trap disguised as a celebration. I invited everyone, Mom, Harry, a few cousins, even Jerry and Karen, playing it off like I wanted to clear the air. Saturday night, my house buzzed with chatter, the smell of roast chicken filling the air. Jerry sat at the table, cocky as ever, Karen beside him in a tight dress, smirking like she'd already won. I poured wine, smiled through gritted teeth, waiting for the right moment. After dessert, I clinked my glass. "Thanks for coming, everyone. I've got a little surprise." Mom wheeled out the projector, and I hooked up my phone. The first image flashed, Jerry and Karen kissing in a hotel lobby. Gasps rippled through the room. I scrolled on. Texts, more photos, Jake's recordings of Jerry bragging about upgrading from me. Harry's face went white. "Karen, is this true?" he demanded. She stammered, tears welling up, but Jerry just sat there, red-faced and silent. Mom stepped forward, her voice like steel. "You two disgust me. You've torn this family apart." The cousins erupted, yelling over each other, while Harry shook his head, muttering, "I can't believe this." I ended it with, "I'm divorcing Jerry. Karen can have him. I'm done." Jerry stormed out, Karen trailing behind, and I collapsed into Mom's arms, relief and exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. The divorce dragged on for months, a slow bleed of lawyers and paperwork. I kicked Jerry out that week, changed the locks, and spent my days in a fog, barely eating, barely sleeping. Tina dragged me out for coffee, forced me to shower, told me, "You're not dying over that asshole." She was right, but it hurt like hell. Then, 2 days after the papers were signed, I was at Mom's, eating ice cream and watching some dumb rom-com, when Harry walked in, his face grim. "Lydia, you see Karen's Facebook?" I hadn't. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding, and there it was, a photo of her and Jerry, beaming, her hand flashing a diamond ring. Caption, "So happy to be engaged." I dropped the phone, my breath catching. Mom snatched it, gasped, and muttered, "That little snake." I sank into the couch, numbness swallowing me whole. Then Karen called Harry. I told him to put her on speaker. Her voice bubbled through, all fake excitement. "Dad, I'm engaged. Jerry proposed last night," Harry cut in, furious. "Karen, what you've done to Lydia, it's unforgivable. You think this is a game?" She whined. "We're in love, Dad. Why can't you be happy?" Then she heard me sniffle and asked, "Is Lydia there?" I grabbed the phone, my voice shaking. "Yeah, I'm here." "What do you want?" She laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Oh, don't cry over Jerry. He's mine now. Anyway, we want you at the wedding. Maybe give a speech. Show everyone you're cool with it." I froze, rage bubbling up. Mom yanked the phone away. "You're a disgrace, Karen. Don't you dare drag Lydia into your mess." I didn't hear the rest. I bolted to the guest room, locked the door, and cried until my throat burned. The next morning I woke up different. Angry, yes, but focused. Karen's smugness lit a fire in me. I wasn't going to crumble. I was going to fight. I opened my laptop, scoured her social media, and found gold. Old posts about Ron Harper, her college boyfriend, the one she'd tattooed on her wrist before he dumped her. I tracked him down on Facebook, a handsome guy, now a car dealership owner, single, with a sly grin that screamed trouble. I messaged him, laying it all out. Karen, Jerry, the affair, the wedding. I want you to be my +1, I typed. Let's make her squirm. He replied an hour later. Damn, that's cold, I'm in. Tina cackled when I told her. You're a genius, Lyd. They'll choke on their own cake. The wedding was a week later. I spent days planning, picking a red dress that hugged my curves, something bold to match the fire inside me. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, smoothing the fabric over my hips, feeling the weight of every stitch like armor. This wasn't just a dress, it was a statement, a scream in scarlet that said I wasn't broken, not yet. Ron met me at my place, looking sharp in a charcoal suit, his dark hair slicked back, those hazel eyes twinkling with mischief. He leaned against the doorframe, sizing me up with a grin. Ready to crash this party? He asked, his voice low and teasing. I nodded, nerves and excitement twisting together in my gut like a coiled spring. My palms were sweaty, my heart thudding, but I forced a smile. Let's make them regret ever crossing me, I said. He chuckled, offering his arm, and we headed out into the crisp evening air, the hum of anticipation buzzing between us. We walked into the venue arm in arm, the banquet hall decked out in white roses and twinkling lights, a picture-perfect scene that made my stomach churn. Heads turned as we passed, cousins I hadn't seen in years, old family friends, all whispering behind their champagne flutes. I caught snippets of their murmurs. Is that Lydia? Who's the guy? I held my head high, my heels clicking on the polished floor, Ron's steady presence beside me anchoring my resolve. Jerry spotted us first, standing near the altar in a tux that looked too tight, his jaw dropping so fast I thought it might hit the ground. He pushed through the crowd, his face a mix of shock and fury, and hissed, "What the hell are you doing with him?" His breath smelled of bourbon, his eyes wild. I smiled sweetly, tilting my head just enough to make it sting. Just here to celebrate, Jerry. Relax. He couldn't argue, not with guests watching, and stormed off, muttering curses under his breath, his fists clenched at his sides. Then Karen appeared, gliding down the aisle in white, her veil trailing behind her like a ghost. Her smug grin faltered when she saw me, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Then she saw Ron. She stopped dead, her bouquet trembling in her hands, petals shaking loose and drifting to the floor. Harry, walking her down, whispered, "Keep going," his voice tight with worry, but she didn't move. Her eyes darted between us, confusion turning to fury, her cheeks flushing red beneath her makeup. I could see the gears turning in her head, the realization sinking in like a stone. Ron squeezed my arm, his lips twitching into a smirk. "Showtime," he murmured. I took a deep breath, stepping forward just enough to catch her gaze. "Hey, Karen," I said, my voice calm but laced with venom. "Looking good. Brought a friend to share the joy. Ron, say hi." He waved casually, his tone smooth as silk. "Long time, Karen. Nice tattoo, by the way. Still got it?" Her face twisted, a snarl breaking through her bridal glow. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the music. The string quartet faltered, notes hanging awkwardly in the air. Harry tugged at her arm, his gray brows furrowing. "Karen, not now," he pleaded, but she yanked free, storming toward us, her dress swishing with every furious step. She stopped inches from me, her breath hot and ragged. "You're ruining my day, Lydia. You spiteful—" I cut her off, my smile unwavering. "You invited me, remember? Wanted me to give a speech? I'm just honoring your wish." The crowd buzzed louder now, guests craning their necks, some pulling out phones to record. Jerry rushed down from the altar, his tie askew, grabbing Karen's shoulder. "Babe, let's just get through this," he begged, but she shoved him off, her eyes locked on Ron. "Why are you with him?" she demanded, her voice cracking. Before Ron could answer, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Oh, this is better than cable!" It was Tina, my best friend, sauntering up from the back row, a glass of champagne in hand, her black dress glittering under the lights. She'd been late, traffic she'd texted, but her timing couldn't have been better. She sidled up beside me, her dark eyes gleaming with delight. "Karen, sweetie, you look like you've seen a ghost. Or maybe just a blast from the past? Karen glared at her, then back at me. "Stay out of this, Tina," she spat. Tina laughed, loud and unapologetic. "Oh, no way. I've been waiting for this showdown since Lydia told me you stole her man. Popcorn, anyone?" A few guests snickered, the tension breaking just enough to make Karen's face burn hotter. Then another figure emerged from the crowd. Jake Russo, the detective I'd hired, his leather jacket out of place among the tuxes and gowns. He'd texted me that morning. "Found something big. Meet me at the wedding." I hadn't expected him to show up like this, but there he was, holding a manila envelope, his jaw set. "Lydia," he said, nodding at me, then glancing at Jerry. "Thought you'd want this now." He handed me the envelope and I opened it, my hands trembling as I pulled out a stack of papers, bank records, emails, photos. I skimmed them, my breath catching. "What's this?" Jerry barked, stepping closer, but Jake held up a hand. "Easy, pal. That's proof you've been dipping into company funds. 10 grand here, 20 there. Oh, and a nice little offshore account for your honeymoon. Ring any bells?" The crowd went silent, all eyes on Jerry, who paled, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Karen whirled on him. "What's he talking about, Jerry?" Her voice was shrill, her composure cracking. I seized the moment, holding up the papers for everyone to see. "Looks like Jerry's been funding your fairy tale with stolen cash, Karen. Guess I wasn't the only one he screwed over." Gasps rippled through the room, Harry's face crumpling as he stared at his daughter. "Karen, tell me this isn't true," he said, his voice breaking. She didn't answer, just glared at me, then at Ron, then at Jerry, her world unraveling in front of 200 guests. Tina whistled low. "Damn, Lydia, you brought the whole circus." Karen's rage boiled over. She threw her bouquet, not at me, but at Jerry, the flowers smacking him square in the chest, petals exploding everywhere. "You idiot!" she screamed, tears streaking her mascara. "You told me it was all legit." He flinched, stumbling back, hands raised. "Babe, I can explain." But she wasn't listening. She turned to me, her eyes wild. "This is your fault. You couldn't just let me have this." I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. "You took my husband, Karen. My life." "I'm just returning the favor." Ron chimed in, his tone dry. "She's got a point, Karen. You always did like taking what wasn't yours. Remember my car sophomore year?" A few older guests chuckled, recognizing the old college drama, and Karen's humiliation deepened. Then Mom pushed through the crowd, her silver hair glinting under the lights, her expression pure steel. "Enough," she barked, silencing the room. She pointed at Karen. "You've shamed this family long enough. And you," she turned to Jerry, "you're lucky I don't drag you out by your ear." Jerry shrank under her gaze, mumbling something incoherent. Mom grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "Lydia, let's go. They're not worth it." But I wasn't done. I looked at Karen, her dress now stained with spilled wine someone had knocked over in the chaos, and said, "Enjoy your day, sis. Hope it was everything you dreamed." I turned to Ron, Tina, and Jake. "We're out." We walked out, the crowd parting like the Red Sea, whispers and stares following us. Outside, the cool air hit my face, and I exhaled, the weight lifting just a little. Tina clapped me on the back. "That was epic, Lyd. Oscar-worthy." Ron grinned, loosening his tie. "Never thought I'd enjoy a wedding this much." Jake lingered, tucking the envelope under his arm. "There's more where that came from. Feds might be interested in Jerry's little side hustle." I nodded, still processing, my heart racing but lighter than it had been in months. Back home, I poured myself a whiskey, sinking into the couch as the adrenaline faded. Tina crashed next to me, kicking off her heels. "So what's next? You've got Jerry on the ropes, Karen's a mess, world's your oyster." I stared at the amber liquid, swirling it in the glass. "I don't know, maybe therapy, maybe a vacation. I just want to feel like me again." She nudged me, grinning. "You're already there, babe. Tonight?" That was Lydia Bennett Badass Edition. I laughed, a real laugh, the first in ages, and it felt good. A week later, Harry called. "Karen's a wreck. Wedding's off. She won't talk to Jerry, won't leave her room." His voice was heavy, tired. "I'm sorry, Lydia. I should have seen what she was." I softened, hearing the pain in him. "It's not your fault, Harry. She made her choices." He sighed. "Still, I hate this. For you, for all of us." I hung up, staring at the phone, a pang of guilt mixing with my triumph. Jerry texted next, angry rants about me ruining his life, then pleased to meet, to talk. I blocked him mid-sentence, done with his noise. Then Ron called. Coffee tomorrow? No drama, just caffeine. I hesitated, then smiled. Yeah, okay, but you're buying. He laughed, warm and easy. Deal. I hung up, leaning back, the future stretching out uncertain but mine. Karen and Jerry could rot in their mess. I'd survived them, maybe even beaten them, and that was enough, for now. I hung up the phone with Ron, a flicker of something warm sparking in my chest. Hope, maybe, or just the thrill of moving forward. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. I swirled the last of my whiskey, the burn of it still lingering on my tongue, and let my mind drift. Tina sprawled on the couch beside me, scrolling through her phone, occasionally snorting at whatever she was reading. People on X are losing it over your wedding stunt, she said, not looking up. Someone called you the Red Dress Reaper. You're a legend. I rolled my eyes, but a small grin tugged at my lips. Great, just what I need, a nickname. She smirked, tossing her phone down. Own it, Lyd. You gave them a show they'll never forget. The next morning, I met Ron at a little coffee shop downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and baristas who looked too cool to care. He was already there, leaning back in a corner booth, a black coffee steaming in front of him. He looked up as I walked in, his grin slow and easy, like he'd been waiting for this longer than a day. Morning, Trouble, he said, sliding a latte my way. Figured you'd need something sweet after all that chaos. I slid into the seat across from him, wrapping my hands around the warm cup, the scent of vanilla calming my frayed nerves. Thanks, I said, meeting his gaze. His eyes held mine a beat too long, and I felt a flush creep up my neck. Not the panicked heat of the wedding, but something softer, more dangerous. So, he said, leaning forward, how's it feel to be the queen of revenge? I laughed, a little shaky. Exhausting, satisfying, weird. Pick one. He nodded, sipping his coffee. You pulled it off, though. Karen's face, I'll be laughing about that for years. We talked for an hour, about college, about the mess with Karen, about nothing at all. He told me he'd moved back to town a year ago after a stint in Chicago, running a car dealership that was doing better than he'd expected. Never thought I'd see her again, he said, his tone darkening. She screwed me over pretty good back then, fake pregnancy scare to keep me around, then ditched me when she got bored. I winced, the parallels hitting too close. Sounds familiar. She's got a type. He shrugged, but there was a hardness in his jaw. Seeing her unravel like that, worth every second of driving up here. I studied him, wondering if he was here for her, for me, or just the thrill of it all. Why'd you say yes to this? I asked, blunt as ever. He paused, then smiled, softer this time. Honestly, you sounded like you needed a win, and maybe I did too. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sipped my latte, letting the moment settle. Back home, I found Mom in my kitchen, stirring a pot of chili like it was her mission to feed an army. Thought you could use some comfort food, she said, glancing over her shoulder. Her silver hair was pulled back, her face still tight with the residue of anger from the wedding. I dropped my purse on the counter, the smell of spices wrapping around me like a hug. You didn't have to, I said, but she waved me off. Nonsense. After what you pulled, you deserve a medal, or at least a bowl of this. I smiled, grabbing a spoon to taste it, the heat and tang grounding me. Ron seems nice, she added, casual but probing. I froze, mid-bite. Mom, don't start. She raised her hands, innocent. Just saying, he's got a good head on him, and he didn't flinch when Karen lost it. That's a keeper in my book. I groaned, but her words stuck with me, nagging at the edges of my thoughts. That afternoon, Tina dragged me to her office. She'd insisted I meet her new assistant, Mara, who'd apparently heard all about the wedding from the gossip mill. Mara was young, maybe 25, with bright pink hair and a pierced nose, typing furiously at her desk when we walked in. She looked up, eyes wide. "Oh my God, you're the red dress lady," she blurted, then clapped a hand over her mouth. Tina cackled, dropping into a chair. "Told you, Mara's obsessed. She's been texting me theories all week." I raised an eyebrow, half amused, half embarrassed. "Theories?" Mara nodded, bouncing in her seat. "Yeah, like, did you plan the bouquet throw? Was the detective guy part of it? It's like a movie." I laughed, shaking my head. "No script, just chaos, and a lot of luck." She grinned, pulling out her phone. "Can I get a selfie? My friends won't believe I met you." I obliged, feeling absurdly like a celebrity, while Tina smirked. You're famous now, Lyd. Next stop, talk shows. Later, as I drove home, my phone buzzed. Jake. Got an update, he said when I picked up. His voice clipped. Jerry's in deeper than we thought. Feds are sniffing around his accounts. Someone tipped them off after the wedding. Might be looking at jail time. My stomach flipped, a mix of shock and grim satisfaction. Who tipped them? I asked, though I suspected the answer. Anonymous, he said, a hint of a smile in his tone. Could have been anyone there. Lots of pissed off people after that scene. I pictured Jerry sweating in an interrogation room, his smugness crumbling, and felt a dark thrill. Keep me posted, I said, hanging up, my mind racing. Karen might have lost her wedding, but Jerry could lose everything, his freedom, his reputation, the life he'd gambled on with her. That night, I sat on my porch, a blanket draped over my shoulders, staring at the stars. The quiet was soothing, but my thoughts wouldn't settle. I'd won, hadn't I? Exposed them, humiliated them, walked away with my head high. So why did I still feel hollow? The betrayal lingered, a bruise that wouldn't fade, and I wondered if revenge was enough to fill the hole they'd left. My phone lit up, a text from Ron. Thinking about round 2? Dinner this time, no exes allowed. I smiled, my fingers hovering over the keys. Only if you promise no drama, I typed back. Scout's honor, he replied, with a winking emoji that made me laugh. The next day I got a call from Harry. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. Lydia, I need to see you. It's about Karen. My stomach tightened, but I agreed, meeting him at a diner near his house. He looked older than ever, his shoulders slumped, a coffee mug cradled in his hands. She's falling apart, he said, staring into the black liquid. Won't eat, won't talk, keeps saying she's sorry, but only to me, not you. I leaned back, crossing my arms. She's got a funny way of showing it. He nodded, pained. I know. I failed her, Lydia. Let her turn into this. But I failed you too, not seeing it sooner. His eyes met mine, wet and pleading. Can you talk to her? Just once? I wanted to say no, to tell him she didn't deserve it, but the hurt in him softened me. I'll think about it, I said, and he exhaled, relieved. I didn't go to Karen, not yet. Instead, I met Ron for dinner, a quiet Italian place, all dim lights and soft music. He wore a navy sweater, sleeves rolled up, and I caught myself noticing the way his forearms flexed when he reached for the bread. You're staring, he teased, catching me off guard. I flushed, laughing it off. Just checking for tattoos, in case you're hiding a Karen tribute. He grinned, shaking his head. No ink here, learned my lesson. The night flowed easy, wine, pasta, stories about his dealership and my old college days. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Jerry or Karen. I was just me. A week later, Jake called again. Jerry's been arrested, he said, matter of fact. Embezzlement, fraud, whole 9 yards. Karen's not implicated, but she's lawyering up anyway. I sat on my couch, stunned, the news sinking in slow. He's done? I asked. Looks like it, Jake said. Thought you'd want to know. I thanked him, hanging up, and stared at the wall. Part of me wanted to cheer, but another part felt nothing. Not joy, not relief, just a quiet emptiness. Tina came over that night bearing tequila and a grin. To Jerry's downfall, she toasted, clinking her shot glass against mine. I downed it, the burn sharp and cleansing, and smiled. To new beginnings, I said, and she whooped, pulling me into a hug. I saw Karen a month later, at Harry's insistence. She sat across from me in his living room, her hair limp, her eyes red-rimmed. I'm sorry, she mumbled, barely audible. I waited, arms crossed, letting the silence stretch. For what? I finally asked. She flinched, looking away. Everything. Jerry, the wedding, all of it. I was stupid. Her voice broke, but I didn't soften. You didn't just hurt me, Karen. You broke us, all of us. She nodded, tears spilling, and I stood up. I don't forgive you, I said. Not yet. Maybe never. But I'm done letting you define me. I walked out, leaving her there, and drove home with the windows down, the wind whipping through my hair, feeling lighter than I had in years. Life moved on. Ron and I kept seeing each other. Coffee turned to dinners, dinners to late-night talks on my porch. Tina got me into yoga, claiming it'd fix my soul, and Mara kept popping up with wild stories about her dating life, making me laugh until my sides hurt. Mom cooked for me every Sunday, Harry called to check in, and Jake sent occasional updates. Jerry's trial was a circus, but I stopped caring. I started a blog, spilling my story online, and it took off. Thousands of comments, people calling me brave, broken, real. I didn't feel brave, not always, but I felt alive, and that was enough. As I sat on my porch that night, the stars winking above me, I thought about everything. Jerry's betrayal, Karen's cruelty, the wedding that turned into a battlefield, and the slow climb back to myself. It hit me then, like a quiet truth settling in my bones. Life doesn't owe you fairness, but it gives you choices. I could have let their mess bury me, let the pain define me until I was nothing but a shadow of who I used to be. Instead, I chose to fight, not just them, but for me. I learned that revenge isn't about winning. It's about reclaiming what's yours, even if it's just your own voice. Jerry's in jail now, Karen's a ghost of herself, and I'm still here, breathing, laughing, living. That's the lesson, I guess. You don't have to forgive, you don't have to forget, but you damn well have to keep going. I poured my heart into that blog, typing out every raw, messy detail, and it's crazy how many of you connected with it. Thousands of comments, stories of your own heartbreaks, your own battles, your own wins. It's humbling, knowing I'm not alone in this. So I want to hear from you. What's your story? Have you ever had to burn it all down to start over? Drop it in the comments, send me a message, whatever feels right. Let's talk about the scars we carry and the strength we find anyway. Because if I can get through this, I know you can too.